There is a lot of damage coming out of the United Methodist Church. A lot of people very upset with what we came from, for good reason, in my opinion, and then examining what we've got in light of that. And that means that we're very sensitive to certain overreach from the top. We're very sensitive. I'm very sensitive to a lack of transparency. And I think some of the critique offered, of course, I think my critique that I've offered around the moderation of speech and central choke points for information is worthy. Of course, I think my points are worthy. I've had a lot of pushback on that since I published last week's article, and I'm still reconsidering my position. So just because I feel something strongly doesn't mean it's right, but I feel like I've laid out a pretty good case. Anyway, I'm not talking about that right now. What I'm talking about is the Transitional Leadership Commission. I always forget what the C stands for. Council. It's council, because I'm looking at the article right here. Anyway, there are a lot of people who've been very willing to entertain the notion that the TLC, Transitional Leadership Council, is corrupt and malicious and is trying to manipulate us. And I don't have that feeling. I wanted to read through, this article this morning. Well, I'll just go ahead and show you. Is written by Walter Fenton, who's been with the GMC from the beginning. He and Keith Boyette have been leading this thing from the top. And then that's Kara Nicholas. She's the chair of the TLC. So here's this article interviews Kara and walks through the TLC is going to be closing up shop and transitioning. And so I was going to read through that and then give my own commentary on the TLC. But I don't think that it's composed of perfect saints, and every decision that they've made has been perfect. But I'm also not conspiratorial about these folks, and I'm actually quite grateful for them in some ways. And I think that they've done a very capable and able job, even if they've done things that I wouldn't like. The whole point of church governance is that people at the top are not going to do everything that you want at the bottom, and yet you still submit to the governance structure. And then within the American framework, within the Western framework, you submit insofar as they meet certain basic requirements and limitations, and that's kind of hard to suss out. I'll be writing about that in my pastoral Substack series on essential Methodist qualities. So if you're not subscribed to that, that's at jeffreyrickman.substack.com. But anyway, today's topic is right here. Let's begin the article. Quote, "Don't get me wrong, it has been a great privilege to serve the Global Methodist Church during this transitional season, but I will be very happy when we can retire that word transitional," said Kara Nicholas, chairwoman of the GMC's Transitional Leadership Council. The GMC is TLC. Of necessity, every council, commission, or our governing document, or even some of our staff members have been called the transitional this or the transitional that. But praise the Lord, in a matter of months, the term will be transitioned out of existence. Created in early March 2020, the TLC has served as the GMC's general decision-making body prior to and ever since the denomination's launch on May 1st, 2022. Originally intended to function for just 6 to 12 months, the COVID pandemic and the repeated postponements of the UMC's 2020 General Conference kept it in existence far longer than its members ever imagined. 11 of the original 17 members are still serving on the council, which has since expanded to 21. The members continue to meet every Monday morning at 9 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, largely deliberating and voting on matters forwarded to it by numerous commissions, task forces, provisional annual conferences, and transitional conference advisory teams. TLC leaders believe thousands of people have participated in the formation of the GMC. So even though the TLC has been just a small team, they've been responsive to many, many large, smaller teams, including TCAT's Transitional Leadership. I served on the TCAT for the Heartland Annual Conference alongside Kara Nicholas, and she was a fantastic partner to work with. So it is true that the TLC was composed of individuals who were not elected. They were selected both prior to the formation of the GMC and after the formation of the GMC. It's true some of their members have not ever moved their membership to the GMC. There are a number of things that are problematic on a long-term basis, but on a short-term basis, the reality is somebody had to lead. Somebody had to lead. calling a convening conference is so much work. They've done it, it seems, about as early as they possibly could. Somebody had to lead. This is the structure that was used. And even though they haven't been as transparent as I would like, very few people are as transparent as I would like. I've seen no evidence to indicate that they've done anything in bad faith or to intentionally manipulate or sway the sentiments of grassroots people. And the only thing that I've really raised the alarm about and said that there needs to be a group discussion on before we carry it any further is just moderating the speech of staff and influential leaders in the GMC. I just think that they should speak for themselves and decide who they can talk to. Other than that, everything else the committee has done, yes, they've stood behind the stuff that they've submitted to General Conference, but they haven't kept any alternative proposals from coming forward. I think that they've really done a good job. They have not been too heavy-handed. Let's go back to the article. If a series of legislative petitions submitted by the TLC are adopted at the GMC's convening conference, the TLC will cease to exist by the close of this year. So we're seeing something exceptional, which is people who have authority and power resigning that authority and power and presenting the plan by which they resign. This is a good thing. It would be replaced by a body called the Connectional Council that would serve as the GMC's chief missional and administrative body, providing leadership at the general church level in between general conferences. It would also have full legislative authority with respect to all matters explicitly delegated to it by the Book of Doctrines and Discipline or the General Conference as stated in each such delegation. Quote, I'm confident GMC members want a general church that is relatively small, nimble, and flexible, said Nicholas. One way we can fulfill that mandate is to convene our necessary but costly general conferences every 6 years rather than every 4 years or 5. However, if that is the case, then we need an administrative body that can act authoritatively in between our gatherings. I think the Connectional Council could do that. So this is something worthy of watching long term to make sure that the Connectional Council operates in good faith, to exercise the conciliar will of the General Conference body. So that's something that I plan on looking at and reporting on. But that is at least the intention starting out. And, I think the reality is that if you want to be able to do big things together, you have to have a central coordinating entity. So I all along have been in favor of a centralized power only insofar as it's responsive and transparent with the people. I think that's the balance that has to be reached. According to the legislation, the Connectional Council would be composed of not more than 24 members. The delegates to the convening General Conference would directly elect 8 members to the Connectional Council, 4 laity and 4 clergy. 5 connectional commissions responsible for various areas of the church would elect 2 members to the council, 1 pastor and 1 layperson. Members of the various commissions would be elected by General Conference delegates. Also, the Assembly of Bishops would elect 2 Episcopal leaders to serve on the council, and then the 20 elected members would elect 4 others to ensure the council fully represented the global nature of the Global Methodist Church. That is a very interesting setup. You have direct conciliar election, but then there's also delegation to elected bodies and nominated bodies to decide the composition of this body. That's a very interesting and complicated thing. I don't think that indicates anything bad. It's an interesting balance. I'm interested to see how it works. GMC leaders must be about the business of doing all they possibly can to equip, empower, and strengthen the local church, said the Reverend Mike Schaefer, who will work as the new denomination's chief connectional operations officer, and therefore will work directly with the Connectional Council. Quote, consequently, we need a body that represents the whole church, is committed to its health and vitality in all places, and enables its local churches to fulfill our mission to make disciples of Jesus Christ who worship passionately, love extravagantly, and witness boldly. That's the tagline. The new council would also work alongside the Assembly of Bishops and the denomination's annual conferences to implement the strategic vision and initiatives set forth by the GMC's general conferences. The council's mandate and authority would, in keeping with the Methodist governing traditions, always derive from the duly elected lay and clergy delegates to the GMC's conferences, the church's general conferences, either directly or indirectly. The general conference would elect or empower others to elect. Yeah, okay, we covered this. While the TLC has played an important role over the past 4 years, now it's time for it to yield more to a more permanent body with the full imprimatur of the church's general conference, said Keith Boyette, the denomination's transitional connectional officer and the first person to serve as the chair of the TLC. I'm sure I speak for all the TLC members when I say that our sincere thoughts and prayers go with men and women, clergy and laity, who would serve on the GMC's first Connectional Council. I'm confident that the entire church will support and pray for them every day. And then it just gives some basic history. So I think this was in good taste to put out, and it gives people some familiarity. I actually spoke with Kara recently, and she was saying this could give people comfort that the TLC is transitioning out and Keith Boyette is stepping down. There's going to be a new crew in charge. And I said, what would give me and others comfort, not that I've been uncomfortable about that, but, it's one thing to say, okay, the TLC is now turning into the Connectional Council, and we had this other guy at the top, and now we have this other guy at the top. So there's this phrase, distinction without a difference. I found that helpful. We changed the names on things, but how did the functions change? Before they were unelected, now Mike Schaefer wasn't elected. He was appointed or hired, right? Even so, I should say, I've talked with Mike. I think he's a stand-up guy. I think he's going to be a fantastic leader. But even so, what's the difference between what we had before and what we're getting now? The only difference I can see is that some of the new folks are going to be elected by the General Conference. But where did the TLC have lots of authority that the Connectional Council is going to have less? Where did Keith have the ability to do overreach that Mike isn't? How are these power dynamics going to work? That hasn't been spelled out anywhere that I've seen or that I've paid attention to. I don't read everything. So if anybody has those answers, then submit them to me. And that's good for me to know as I continue to talk about what the GMC is doing. But the final thought and reflection I had is just a reiteration of what I already said, which is that I think the TLC has really done a fantastic job laying out the groundwork, being responsive to the challenges that have come before us for this last year. And I think that they really have done their level best. I think some members of the TLC have probably been too active, and some have not been nearly active enough. And I think a language barrier has played a role in that. I have been concerned. The only other thing that I've really been concerned about that the TLC has done is allowing for ethnically based conferences in the U.S. I've spoken on it before, but if you haven't heard me, I think it was a real mistake to allow for a Korean annual conference within America. I think any ethnic, racial separation in the church, I know it happened. The Koreans said they wanted it. They were the ones who proposed it, and they were very stringent in their desire for it. Even so, I think the long-term implications are always going to cause racial resentment and separation, and I think that goes against the mission of the church. And so I think even though it was with good intentions and for some good reasons, that's the only other decision the TLC made that I really have a problem with. But saying that, I still, I think I can say that and acknowledge TLC has been selfless in their service, and I just want to congratulate and appreciate Karen Nicholas and the rest of the TLC. And on behalf of at least me, thank you. You did a job that I would not have wanted to do. So there's a reason why I'm doing this, and I'm not seeking office or I'm not seeking to serve in that capacity. They have the hard job. I just have the easy job, just thinking about it and talking about it. So it's real easy to Monday morning quarterback it and to say things from the peanut gallery. So I just want to do my part to be fair and say they've served us tirelessly and selflessly. They haven't gotten paid for what they've done. And so I think that you should give thanks for the TLC, and we'll pray for them whenever we close this session. And in the meantime, you should be in prayer for them as they close out this season.